Hello everybody. So this build is something I've been super excited about. I had this build I was cooking up in the back burner in cycle 1. I was thinking of like this volatile zombie, spread infernal shades, sacrifice your minions kind of build, and I was super excited at the thought process. I decided I was going to go ahead and play it, so I was playing it. I got to like 100 corruption. Things were working out. It was working pretty well. We were doing infernal pop, we were doing sacrifice, everything was super cool. And then I was traveling abroad, and I was just scrolling through like the last Epoch patch notes, and I saw there was a bug fix on something that normally does not get bug fixed, and that was Penance. So Penance, for those who don't know, is a curse that when the target hits something, they take damage. Okay, so if you have a minion hit the enemy, the minion will take damage. Right, so it's like a self-reflected damage thing. So you apply it on the enemy, they take a bit of damage. I was like, why is this thing getting bug fixed, right? I was already kind of toying with this idea, and so I was like, why is this thing getting bug fixed? Turns out there's a ton of people running builds with self-penance, where they affect themselves with penance and use that to generate a whole bunch of ward, which is very funny. So I sort of integrated that into my build, and I was doing some things, and we've ended up with this, which is a very weird amalgamation of a warlock that I'm just going to call a KAMIKAZE warlock, right? So let me sort of break down the build from a high level, right? We want to cast Infernal Shade, and Infernal Shade is a sort of debuff on the enemy that makes them take damage over time, and we want to take the node Combustion to make it explode, right? So we want to put Infernal Shades on the target to make them take damage, but Infernal Shade lasts for 5 seconds, and we can reduce it down to like 2 seconds with a lot of different nodes in the passive tree, and occasionally I think like with a 20% chance we can reduce it down to like 0.8 seconds, right? So every 0.8 seconds we can apply an Infernal Shade onto the target, making them explode and take a bunch of damage. Great. But applying it every 2 seconds, it's kind of slow. So I wanted to see if there is a way to apply more often. And there is a way. If you've looked into Chthonic Fissure, you know that there's a node called Return Below that makes your Infernal Shade deal its remaining damage immediately. And that node was a ton of fun. It felt really good. You just apply Infernal Shades onto target. They go boom, 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 and you can do like 4 per second. That's awesome. The only problem is if you accidentally cast a Chthonic Fissure when an existing one is up, the second Chthonic Fissure won't apply the same thing, and for some reason the tormented enemies will not have the same property of consuming the Infernal Shade, which sucks, right? So there's a bug in the build that makes it kind of unplayable, and so I parked it, I set it aside, I said, okay, whatever. And then I was looking at different ways to make it work, and you can do something with Infernal Shade that's pretty interesting. You can apply it to your minions. And so if you can apply it to your minions, then you have a bunch of minions surrounding the target. They all have Infernal Shade on them. They all blow up. And guess what? You have the enemy now affected by the explosion of like 5 or 6 Infernal Shades, which is solid, right? So we're getting like 6 Infernal Shades per second-ish, right? Which is a ton of damage. It's a ton of damage. So that's essentially the mindset that we're going into. We're using Infernal Shade to cast on our minions, and our minions, the more minions we have that can have Infernal Shade, will deal damage to the target with their explosions. Now, how do we get as many Infernal Shades as possible? Well, you can get 2 Infernal Shades extra per cast with Legion, and you can probably cast like, with Alchemist Ladle, we can increase our cast speed and cast like 2 or 3 times per second, right? So we can do Legion to cast stacks of 3 Infernal Shades onto our minions, so we can have either 6 or 9 depending on the number of minions we have. Okay, great. That's how we can stack Infernal Shades. But are there any other ways? And the other way to do it is with Volatile Zombie. See, Volatile Zombies can cast Infernal Shade on death. So you summon one zombie, you put an Infernal Shade on them, they die, their Infernal Shade explodes. They also cast Infernal Shade onto an ally, which is awesome, right? So we're passing the Infernal Shades around. We're getting extra casts of Infernal Shades based on the number of Volatile Zombies we have. Perfect. But we can do even better. We can use our zombies to create more minions with Corpse Parasites, which will summon 2 Corpse Parasites whenever one of our zombies dies. So one of our zombies can create 2 Corpse Parasites, which is awesome. But we can do even better, which is that we can have Awakening Presence so that whenever one of our minions dies, that's not a zombie or a corpse parasite. So another minion, whenever it dies, it has a chance to summon Volatile Zombie, right? So now we have zombies also propagating more minions and also creating more Infernal Shades, and we can get zombies from other minions. So remember, we can't use it on corpse parasites. So where can we use it, right? We can use Summon Skeleton to summon skeletons that when they die, might summon a Volatile Zombie. Remember, 30% chance, which is awesome. And we can do something else with our Summon Skeletons, right? We can use Summon Skeleton to get Mind Catcher. Mind Catcher gives us 15 mana whenever one of our skeletons dies. And remember, dying can't summon a Volatile Zombie. Plus, when we do Infernal Shade on our minions, they take damage, so we naturally kill our own minions that way. So now we have our like whole hoist of suicide bombers that we're going to send forth to the minions to kill them. And we can summon up to 3 skeletons at once with a maximum of 5 skeletons being summoned. So pretty solid there. We're summoning 5 skeletons and zombies, and we're summoning our zombies with Thonic Fissure, because Thonic Fissure gives us a zombie summoned every 2 seconds. 70% of the time it'll just be 1 zombie, 30% of the time it'll be however many zombies are on our Volatile Zombie skill tree, which is cool because we can have up to 2 fissures down. So 2 fissures can summon 2 zombies every 2 seconds. That will summon 2 corpse parasites per zombie, which will be 4. That will spread 2 extra Infernal Shades, right? So every 2 seconds we have a guaranteed extra of at least 2 zombies. Cool. So basically, with this long chain of synergies, we are now applying Infernal Shade to all of our minions many times, and the only thing stopping us from doing a ton of damage is our minions being alive. We just need our minions to live long enough to generate a ton of Infernal Shades, right? And that's the crux of our build. We are also using Self-Penance, which I explained a little bit earlier, but basically, we are applying with Bone Curse. So there's this item called Pearls of the Swine. It gives Bone Curse, also inflicts Penance, right? We are then applying Bone Curse to ourselves, right? So we afflict ourselves with Penance, and then we apply Bone Curse to our minions. So we afflict our minions with Penance and Bone Curse. So both of us have Bone Curse and Penance. Whenever our minions hit something, they deal damage to themselves. Whenever they deal damage to themselves, they apply Bone Curse. Whenever Bone Curse is applied, we deal damage to our minions. Whenever we deal damage to our minions, we take damage from our Penance. And whenever we take damage from our Penance, we generate Ward. Ward on hit and Ward on block. So we're generating a ton of Ward additionally with all of the Penance that's applied to ourselves. Okay. That's a long chain of synergies, but that's basically how this build works. It's pretty awesome. And yeah, so going through all the skills one at a time, just to talk about some of the nodes that we're using. Devour in Flames makes our Infernal Shades targetable to minions. Blazing Shade gives us a ton of more damage. Legion gives us the additional shades on cast, and then Wildfires for the more damage that applies to our Combustion Explosion, which makes our explosion at the end of the Infernal Shade timeout, and then Flame Burst to give ourselves some crit chance. Then we're going Volatile Zombie, giving it that effigy of combustion to summon Infernal Shades on death, giving Awakening Presence to give a chance to summon Volatile Zombie on minion death whenever our skeletons die, and Dreadful Horde to give ourselves a chance to summon more minions from indirect casts, and Vile Force to summon corpse parasites whenever our zombies die. Okay, then we go into Summon Skeleton, which gives us Mind Catcher to regen our mana, Memory Catcher to give us increased spell damage whenever they die, so this should always be up, and then we're going into Gravewalker and Hollow Walker for increasing our max number of skeletons. We are taking Shambling Steel to remove archers from the pool because archers stand away from the enemy, so the explosion might not overlap. So no archers for us, and then a chance to resummon our skeletons. And then we have Thonic Fissure. Thonic Fissure, we're using it to get Rekindled Graves to get volatile zombies. We're using it to get acid skin to make us crit more, and we're using it to inflict ourselves with torment to gain spell damage. With 2 fissures up, I've seen myself get up to like 6 stacks of torment on ourselves. 6 stacks of torment. It is a curse, which is a negative ailment applied to ourselves, which is awesome, but it also gives us 18 spell damage that applies to our Infernal Shade, specifically Combustion, which has 200% added damage effectiveness, so pretty solid. And then Bone Curse. You need Signet of Agony and Merciless. I like Cultist Fervor because, you know, the mana is a problem. And then I like Mark of Death because we have enough resist for the most part, and it's hard to get Mark of Death elsewhere on our build, so we need it somewhere. It does hurt ourselves to use it, so if you can't manage it, don't use it. But otherwise, yeah. And then some just normal stuff. Okay, so those are our passives. Then, sorry, those are our skills. Then talking about our passives. Pretty stock standard Acolyte Tree. Necromancer. We want to increase our minion health, give them some armor, and then whenever our minions die, we generate some ward. So pretty nice right there. And then from passives, Chaos Flames in order to get fire damage and ignite chance. Soul Stealer to get mana regen. Occultist Mind to get intelligence and mana. Ward of Maleficence to get Ward Decay Threshold. Then we want Vitality and Ward Decay Threshold per 2% necrotic resistance. Then we want health, armor, and then more armor per curse on target. And then we want ward per second plus less damage taken per curse on target. Remember, we are doing a lot of curse stuff, so it's pretty handy. Wither, because Wither makes us take less damage and it makes them take more damage. Ignite Chance and what is this? Ignite Overload, yeah. We want Ignite Chance because we care about our Ashes of Immortality, which helps us generate more ward per Ignite stack on the target. So this helps during bossing. It'll help us gain like about 1,000 extra ward while we're bossing. Our extra points go into Malefic Body for the Intelligence and Vitality because we are an attribute stacking build, so that's handy. Chaotic Strikes for the double damage chance. Wreak Havoc for the crit multi and crit multi with Chaotic Strikes. And then you just need 1 point inside of Fleeting Prone to give us a little bit more mobility and then a little bit more cast speed. And finally, Aspect of Death. We want the more health. We do apply a lot of negative ailments to ourselves, so we can utilize the more damage. But mainly, we want the more health for the Twisted Heart to give us more ward generation. And then Accursed Seer. Increased cast speed. It's nice. A little bit of a threshold node with a cleanse if we get too low. It's handy. Okay, itemization. So Pearls of the Swine is mandatory for what we're doing. We want to inflict penance on ourselves in order to get the self-penance for the amount of ward we can generate. And I'll show you guys that right now, actually. So just getting everything set up. So I activated Bone Curse. If you look, I am going up to like 9,000 ward, and it's pretty normal amount of 9,000 ward, right? Let me let all these guys die out. Disable my Bone Curse. Okay, so this is minions without Bone Curse. If you look just for my Twisted Heart, we're sitting around 6,000 ward. So we're getting like 3,000 ward. And remember, with the formula, it falls off very hard as soon as you get to the higher amounts of ward. Okay, time to get rid of all of these guys. We are running an unspec'd transplant. Just for, you know, mobility, right? It's a good mobility skill. It's one of the best in the game. Okay. So that's our penance, our Pearls of the Swine inflicting penance on ourselves. It gives us vitality, all res, all attributes, very powerful amulet overall. Then I'll talk about like our most contentious piece of gear, which is our shield. So it gives us ward on block. We have 25% there, 18% from the implicit, like the tier 6 that we have on there. So we have, I think, 50% block chance, but we have literally 0 block effectiveness. And that's because we don't actually care about reducing the damage from the block. We care about minion health, which is important to keeping our minions alive in the higher corruption. And we care about blocking to generate ward. So we don't actually need to block to reduce damage, although that would be nice. I have a separate one here with block effectiveness, and I've messed around with it. The only issue I had with this is that I really wish that there was, you know, I really wanted there to be minion health on this and block chance, and considering there's 3 things I want on there, I would need to get one of them sealed, and getting a tier 6 sealed has to come from a nemesis basically. It's very hard, so if I ever find it, you know, that's what I would use. But I think this one that I currently have equipped is better. When I was leveling, I was using Sanathia's Resurrection because it gave a good amount of block chance, good amount of block effectiveness, easy to get. It also resurrected our skeletons and made our minions hella tanky. And then I was experimenting with this for a while. It gives us more damage for sure, but with this version you can't really use self-penance, but Scales of Atera does let you do more damage. You can get crit multi on there, which is nice. You can get intelligence and cast speed. You just have to make sure you get the one without fire damage, because we are a fire-based build, so you want cold and lightning on the bottom too. It gives us base spell critical strike chance and intelligence as implicit, so it's a very powerful catalyst. Okay, so those are the super contentious item slots, which is our offhand catalyst. From that point, our ring slot is our next most contentious, which we care about 3 things. Cycle of Putrescence can help keep our volatile zombies going, right? Because we don't really summon them that often. That will be a mana problem in the future, but you know, that's a problem for another day. We ended up not using it, not because I didn't have a good Cycle of Putrescence, but because I wanted Red Ring. Red Ring gives us all res, it gives us reduced damage taken when we have over 180 stats. So the 10% reduced damage taken is pretty big. It gives us like 5 to all attributes, which is pretty powerful. So there's a ton of things that it's doing that we care about. So I would rather use Red Ring, and then Ashes of Mortality. It pretty much gives us like up to 2k ward, right? Or like I think 1k extra ward. So using it's very powerful defensively. So I don't want to trade that for volatile zombies, which will also introduce, you know, mana problems into the build. So I don't want to do that. That's something I'm not interested in doing. Okay, so that's what we're doing with our rings. Those were the options. After that, Immolator's Ablation. This is how you put Ignite on yourself. It gives you 2 spell damage for fire and necrotic skills per stack of Ignite on you. So you gain Ignite on yourself whenever you use a fire necrotic skill, and we use Infernal Shade as our fire skill. So that's how we're generating stacks of Immolator Ablation. I think I've seen like 6 stacks. It's hard to get to the cap. I think it can go up to 20. It's hard to get there, you know. But I've seen 6. That's 12 extra spell damage. That's very nice. That's base spell damage too, so everything gets applied by it. Increasing Ignite duration and then using potions to cleanse yourself. Very powerful affixes on a belt. Mad Alchemist Ladle. You can probably use Wrong Warp here as well. The reason I'm using Ladle is because 1, we have a lot of ailments that we're playing anyways for our more spell damage. 2, we get cast speed per intelligence, and we're stacking intelligence, so it's easy to get a lot of cast speed. And then 3, I kind of hate the way Wrong Warp teleports you to a weird place. I don't enjoy it, so there you go. Mad Alchemist Ladle. Bone Claimer, kind of best in slot. It gives you intelligence, and we already have a ton of necrotic resistance, so, you know, getting the ward per second per 3% uncapped, pretty easy. And then Blood of the Exile, kind of just best in slot. It gives us all the attributes we care about for our Red Ring. It gives you a lot of intelligence. What more do you want? Lich's Envy, we need this in order to cast our Infernal Shade for free. I have minus 11 to the mana cost. This pretty much makes it so that our mana for our Infernal Shade is 0. So we need to cast it for free in order to make this build work. Otherwise, we'll just burn ourselves out of our mana. Okay, and then Twisted Heart. This obviously has 12% increased health instead of 20. 20 would be a lot more health. That's a place where I could improve. It gives me strength, cast speed, +1 to elemental skills, and then % of your current health to ward whenever you cast an elemental skill. So, very powerful for our defenses. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory why we're using it. Very powerful. Next, let's talk about idols. We are using Throne of Ambition for 2% more fire damage per stack of ambition. We stack this up to 20 stacks whenever we're fighting a boss, so we're getting 20 times 2, 40% more damage per, so it's pretty big. Then we have a bunch of ward per second and increased health wherever possible, because we want increased health for our Twisted Heart. Ward per second is also very good. And then finally, we want ward gained when hit on our idols wherever possible. So I only have 2 right now. I want to get it to be at least 3, if not 4. So that's my next goal. And then blessings. I have all res, armor, block chance, and crit multi. I was not able to get a good crit multi, so that's where we're at there. And then ward per second here. It could be ward on hit. I haven't decided which one's better. I have ward per second right now. So those are our blessings. Okay. I hope you guys are having a good time in the season. It's super fun. I'm very excited. There's still so many builds to try out, even though I've tried out this many. I've beaten Aberoth, obviously. You probably saw it in the background footage. If not, I put it at the end. This is definitely more of like a mono killing build than a boss killing build. Its AoE is pretty good. I think now that I've gotten it to like 500 corruption, I'm going to pivot out and try something else, but that is also there. So see you later. Like if you want to see more of things like this, and drop a subscribe because, you know, I'm having a lot of fun doing this. I think some of you guys are having a lot of fun too. Make sure to leave a comment. I love interacting with the community. That's kind of why I'm doing all of this. So if you guys are interested, give me a thumbs up. See y'all later.